I used to believe that if you truly loved someone, you could feel it in your bones when something was wrong. That gut instinct, the whisper in the back of your mind, the shift in the air around you, it was all supposed to mean something. But when it came to my husband, I ignored those whispers. I smoothed over my doubts with logic, with trust, with the unwavering belief that he would never betray me. I was wrong. Nathan had always been the most important man in his office. The kind of husband who commanded attention, who walked into a room and made people straighten their backs, who thrived in the world of polished shoes and decisive handshakes. I used to be proud of that. I used to beam when people told me how lucky I was to have him. And then, there was his secretary. Madeline. Young, poised, always immaculately dressed. She had this effortless way of making herself useful, of anticipating his needs before he even voiced them. I hadn't thought much of her before, just another cog in the well-oiled machine that was my husband's success. Until a few weeks ago. Nathan and I had been having dinner, a rare moment where we both sat at the same table, sharing a meal without his phone constantly buzzing. I had mentioned her name in passing, more out of curiosity than suspicion. "She's just my secretary, Anna," he had said, rolling his eyes. Nothing more. I had believed him. Or at least, I had wanted to. But then things started changing. Late nights at the office. Missed calls. Text messages left unanswered for hours. At first, I tried to be understanding. Work must be stressful, I told myself. He's just busy. But when the nights stretched longer and the silence grew thicker, doubt began to fester. And then there were the small things. His cologne lingering on his shirts long past work hours, the way he avoided my gaze when I asked what time he'd be home, the way his phone was always face down on the table. So, I decided to surprise him. I didn't tell him I was coming. I didn't even text to ask if he was still at the office. If everything was fine, if he was telling the truth, then I'd find him where he was supposed to be, sitting at his desk, surrounded by paperwork, too consumed by his job to answer my messages. But as I stepped into the building, my heart pounded in a way that told me I wasn't going to like what I found. I took the elevator up to his floor, my hands tightening around the handle of the bag I had brought, his favorite takeout, a small gesture of love, a test I didn't realize I was administering until that moment. The front desk was empty. Madeline's desk was empty. A strange, uneasy silence stretched through the office. It was late, most of the employees had gone home. But Nathan was still here. I walked toward his office, my footsteps hushed against the carpet. And then I heard it. A soft laugh. A hushed voice. And something else. Something unmistakable. The sound of betrayal. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the doorknob. I knew. Even before I opened the door, I knew. But nothing could have prepared me for the sight that awaited me on the other side. My fingers trembled on the doorknob, but I forced them to move. Slowly, deliberately, as if giving myself one last chance to turn back. But I didn't turn back. I opened the door. And there they were. Nathan. My husband. The man who had promised me forever. And Madeline. Her blouse undone, her back arched, her fingers clutching at him like he was the very air she breathed. His hands that once held mine with devotion, were on her, gripping her waist, pulling her close, their bodies tangled in an intimacy that had no place in this office, in our marriage, in my life. For a moment, time fractured. The world stopped making sense. I stood there, frozen, watching the scene unfold like I was outside my own body, like I had stumbled into someone else's nightmare. Then, as if sensing me, Nathan turned his head. And our eyes met. It was that moment, that exact second, that shattered everything. I saw it all in his face. The shock. The guilt. The fear. And then, something worse. Relief. Not because he was glad I had caught him, but because now, he didn't have to hide it anymore. A strangled sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. Madeline gasped, jerking away from him, her face pale, her hands scrambling to button her blouse. "Anna," Nathan started, but his voice felt like a knife against my skin. "Don't." My voice was low, shaking, but firm. I held up a hand, cutting him off before he could feed me whatever excuse he had lined up. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. I had imagined this moment before, in my darkest fears. I had wondered what I would do, how I would react, what I would say. But nothing prepared me for the way my heart physically ached in my chest. I wanted to scream. To cry. To throw something. But I did none of those things. Instead, I took a step back. Then another. And then I turned and walked away. Not because I was weak. But because if I stayed a second longer, I wasn't sure if I'd ever recover. Nathan called after me, but his voice barely registered. The walls of the office blurred around me as I stumbled toward the elevator, my breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. I pressed the button, my fingers icy and numb. The doors opened, and I stepped inside, the air in the small space suddenly too thick, too suffocating. As the elevator doors slid shut, sealing me away from the wreckage of my marriage, only one thought ran through my mind. What do I do now? I don't remember the elevator ride down. One moment, I was staring at Nathan's stunned face, watching the reality of what he had done settle in his eyes. The next, I was outside, standing in the cold night air, my breath coming out in harsh, uneven bursts. The city lights blurred through the unshed tears in my eyes. I felt like I was floating, weightless and unmoored, as if I had stepped out of my own life and into someone else's tragic story. I reached for my phone. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through my contacts, hovering over my best friend's name, Emily. For a moment, I hesitated. Saying it out loud would make it real. But it was real. And I had never needed anyone more than I did at that moment. I pressed the call button. She picked up on the second ring. "Anna? Are you okay?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My throat felt tight, choked with emotions too big to name. "Anna?" Her voice was sharper now, laced with concern. "He's cheating," I whispered. Silence. Then, a sharp intake of breath. "What?" I swallowed hard, forcing the words out before I lost my nerve. "Nathan. He was with her. In his office." My voice broke. "I saw them." "Oh my God." Emily's voice dropped into something raw and fierce. "Where are you?" "Outside his building." "Stay there." "I'm coming." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and ended the call. The moment the line went dead, the reality of what had just happened crashed over me like a tidal wave. My husband had cheated on me. Not just in theory, not just in late-night suspicions or half-formed doubts, but in reality. In front of me. I wrapped my arms around myself, as if I could physically hold myself together. The sound of footsteps broke through the haze. Nathan. I didn't even have to turn around to know it was him. I could feel him, his presence, his hesitation, the weight of his guilt pressing against my back. "Anna," he said, his voice breathless, desperate. "Please, just let me explain." I turned slowly, my body feeling like it didn't belong to me. His tie was crooked. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. And yet, he still had the audacity to stand in front of me, trying to piece together an excuse. "There's nothing to explain," I said, my voice eerily calm. His jaw tightened. It wasn't what it looked like. A hollow laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Oh, really? So what was it, then? Some kind of hands-on work meeting?" "Anna, please." His eyes were pleading. It was a mistake. That word. A mistake. As if it had just happened, as if he had tripped and fallen into her arms, as if it wasn't a choice he had made over and over again. I felt something inside me snap. "You don't get to do this," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. You don't get to stand here and lie to me. You don't get to act like this was some kind of accident. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration bleeding through. I didn't want to hurt you. Another laugh, sharp, bitter. Well, congratulations. You did. The honk of a car horn cut through the night. Emily's car. I turned without another word and walked toward it. Nathan reached for me, but I pulled away. Don't, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Don't touch me. I climbed into the car and slammed the door shut. As we drove away, I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look back. Because I knew, if I did, I might never find the strength to walk away again. Emily didn't say a word as she drove. She didn't need to. The car was filled with silence, thick and suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic sound of my shallow breaths. My hands were clasped tightly in my lap, my nails digging into my palms, but I couldn't feel anything. I was numb. You're in shock, Emily finally said, her voice soft but firm. It's okay. Just breathe. I tried. I really did. But every time I inhaled, I saw them. Nathan. Madeline. The way he held her. The way she looked at him. The way his hands, gripped her waist like she was the only thing that mattered. My stomach twisted violently. Pull over, I choked out. Emily immediately veered to the side of the road. I barely got the door open before I was doubled over, dry heaving onto the pavement. Nothing came up. Just pain. So much pain. I felt her hand on my back, grounding me, keeping me from spiraling completely. When the shaking subsided, I leaned against the car, pressing my forehead against the cool metal. I don't know what to do. Emily crouched beside me, her expression fierce. You don't have to know what to do right now. You just have to get through this moment. I squeezed my eyes shut. I keep thinking, maybe this is a mistake. Maybe I misunderstood. Emily exhaled sharply. Anna. No. I swallowed hard. But. No, she gripped my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. You saw him, Anna. You saw them. You know what you saw. A tear slipped down my cheek. I don't want to know. Her face softened. I know. But you do. I let out a shuddering breath. What now? Emily hesitated. Do you want to go home? Home. The house Nathan and I had built together. The place filled with memories, with laughter, with love that I had thought was real. I shook my head. I can't. Not yet. Emily nodded like she had expected that answer. Then come to my place. I didn't argue. I didn't have the strength to. As she pulled back onto the road, my phone buzzed in my lap. Nathan. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. Nathan, please talk to me. I'm sorry. I love you. A sob caught in my throat. I locked the phone and turned it face down. Emily glanced at me but didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Because she knew, just like I did, that love wasn't supposed to hurt like this. And if it did, it wasn't love at all. Emily's apartment was small but warm, the kind of place that felt lived in, safe. The moment we stepped inside, she guided me straight to the couch, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and handed me a glass of water. Drink, she instructed. I took a small sip, my throat raw, my stomach still twisted in knots. She sat down beside me, crossing her legs underneath her. Talk to me. I shook my head. I don't know what to say. Then start anywhere. I hesitated, gripping the glass tighter. I don't understand how this happened. Emily let out a slow breath. Do you think this was the first time? The question hit me like a slap. I hadn't let myself go there yet. I had been so consumed with tonight, with the sight of them tangled together, that I hadn't thought about what came before. The late nights. The unanswered texts. The way he had started pulling away months ago, just little things, forgetting to kiss me goodbye, being too tired for date nights, scrolling through his phone instead of talking to me in bed. I had told myself it was work. Stress. Life. But now. How long had I been making excuses for a man who had already chosen someone else? I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily watched me carefully. What do you want to do? I let out a bitter laugh. I want to erase tonight. I want to rewind time and pretend I never saw any of it. She didn't flinch. And then what? Go back to pretending nothing was wrong? I swallowed. Maybe. Her eyes softened. Anna, you deserve better. I shook my head. I don't even know what that means anymore. A heavy silence settled between us. Then, my phone buzzed again. Nathan. I didn't have to look to know. My hands clenched into fists. He keeps texting. Emily's jaw tightened. What's he saying? I exhaled sharply. That he's sorry. That he loves me. Emily rolled her eyes. Yeah? He loved you while he had his hands all over his secretary too, huh? The words stung, but they were exactly what I needed to hear. Because that was the truth. Nathan was sorry. But only because he had been caught. Not because he had done it. I turned my phone off and set it on the coffee table. Emily nodded in approval. So what's next? I stared at the dark screen, my heart pounding. What was next? I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to Nathan. And I wasn't going to let him rewrite the story of what he had done. The next morning, I woke up in Emily's guest room, disoriented and heavy with exhaustion. For a moment, I forgot where I was, until the memories of last night crashed over me like a tidal wave. Nathan. Madeline. The office. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it all away. It didn't work. A soft knock at the door pulled me out of my spiral. Hey, you awake? Emily's voice was gentle. Yeah. My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. She peeked inside, holding up 2 steaming mugs. Coffee? I forced a small smile. You're a saint. As I sat up, she handed me a mug and settled onto the edge of the bed. I hate to bring this up first thing in the morning, but, have you decided what you're going to do? I let out a slow breath, staring down into the coffee. I don't even know where to start. Well, she said, setting her mug down. Do you want to talk to him? I didn't answer right away. My gut reaction was no. But ignoring Nathan forever wasn't an option. We had a house. A life. I have to, I admitted reluctantly. But not yet. Emily nodded. Take your time. But just remember, he's going to try to manipulate you. I sighed. I know. But nothing could have prepared me for just how fast he would try. Later that afternoon, I finally turned my phone back on. It took less than a minute for the notifications to flood in. Missed calls. Voicemails. Text messages. Nathan, Anna, please. Just talk to me. Nathan, I messed up, but it wasn't what it looked like. Nathan, you don't understand. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you. Nathan, we can fix this. Don't throw everything away over a mistake. I clenched my jaw. A mistake. Was it a mistake the first time? The second? Or the 100th? A fresh wave of anger surged through me, and before I could stop myself, I did something reckless. I called him. He picked up on the first ring. Anna. I stayed silent, waiting. He let out a shaky breath. I'm so sorry. I swallowed the lump in my throat. How long? Silence. Then, softly, Anna. How long? He sighed. A few months. I clenched my free hand into a fist. Months. Did you love her? My voice came out steadier than I expected. I love you. His voice cracked. I never stopped. I almost laughed. The audacity. The desperation. You don't get to say that, I said coldly. Not anymore. Anna, please. His voice was raw. We can fix this. I let out a slow, measured breath. I'm not the one who broke us. A long silence stretched between us. Then, finally, he whispered, so, what now? I closed my eyes. I already knew. I just wasn't ready to say it yet. I didn't answer Nathan's question. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I ended the call. I stared at my phone for a long time after that, my mind racing, my heart pounding. Nathan wanted to fix things. He wanted to salvage the wreckage of our marriage. But how do you fix something that was already dust? Emily found me sitting on her couch, phone clenched in my hand, eyes distant. She didn't ask what happened. She just sat beside me, waiting. Finally, I exhaled. He said it was just a mistake. Emily scoffed. Oh, of course. Just a mistake. A months-long mistake. I swallowed hard. He thinks we can fix this. She turned to face me fully. Do you? I hesitated. Did I? Once upon a time, I would have done anything to keep our marriage together. I would have fought for it, clung to it, swallowed my pride just to keep him. But now? Now, all I could see when I closed my eyes was them. I looked at Emily, my throat tight. I don't think I can forgive him. Her face softened. Then don't. It sounded so simple. But it wasn't. Because if I didn't forgive him, if I truly walked away, then I had to face everything that came next. The house. The life we built. The ending of it all. I set my phone down. I need to go home. Emily blinked. Are you sure? I nodded slowly. I need to see it. To feel it. I can't make a decision until I do. She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. Okay. But I'm coming with you. I didn't argue. Because deep down, I knew, I wasn't strong enough to face Nathan alone. The drive back to my house felt like stepping toward a battlefield. My hands were clammy, my stomach twisted in knots. As Emily pulled into the driveway, I saw Nathan's car parked outside. He was waiting for me. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. My heart pounded as I walked to the front door, my keys clutched tightly in my hand. Before I could unlock it, the door swung open. Nathan stood there, looking wrecked. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled like he hadn't slept all night. His eyes I used to love, were filled with something I couldn't quite name. Anna, he breathed, like he was afraid I'd disappear. I stood my ground. I'm only here to get my things. His face crumpled. No. Please. Let's talk. I clenched my jaw. Talk? You mean like how you and Madeline talked? He flinched. It wasn't like that. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I saw you, Nathan. I saw everything. He ran a hand through his hair, desperate. I made a mistake. There it is again, I murmured. That word. His hands balled into fists at his sides. You're just going to throw everything away? Over one mistake? I met his gaze, steady and unwavering. No, Nathan. You threw everything away. Silence. I could see it then, the moment he realized he had lost me. Not just in anger. Not just in pain. But truly, completely. Still, he had one last card to play. His voice softened, his shoulders sagging. I love you, Anna. Once, those words would have broken me. Now? They meant nothing. I turned, stepping inside the house. I'll be out in an hour. And with that, I walked away. For the first time, I felt free. I walked past Nathan without another glance, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break free from my chest. The air inside our home felt different, tainted, suffocating, no longer mine. Emily followed close behind, her presence a quiet reassurance. Nathan didn't try to stop me as I climbed the stairs, but I could feel his eyes on me, heavy with desperation. I didn't care. Not anymore. I stepped into our bedroom, no, his bedroom now, and for a moment, I just stood there, taking it in. The bed we once shared. The closet where our clothes hung side by side. The framed photos of us, of the life I thought was unshakable. I felt like a ghost in my own home. Emily touched my arm gently. What do you need? I swallowed hard. A suitcase. She nodded and moved to grab one from the closet while I walked to the dresser. My fingers hovered over the drawers, hesitation creeping in. Taking my things felt so final. But wasn't that the point? I pulled open the drawer and started grabbing essentials, jeans, sweaters, pajamas. Things that were mine. Not ours. Not his. Emily moved to the closet, yanking down my dresses and jackets, tossing them onto the bed. Fast and efficient, she muttered. Like ripping off a band-aid. I let out a short, humorless laugh. A band-aid wouldn't be enough to fix this. She paused, glancing at me. No. But leaving is a start. I nodded and kept packing. Behind me, I heard the soft shuffle of footsteps. Nathan. I didn't turn around. Anna, his voice was hoarse. I kept folding clothes. What? Are you really doing this? I finally looked at him, my expression unreadable. You should have asked yourself that before you slept with her. He winced. I told you. Yeah. A mistake. I shoved more clothes into the suitcase. You don't have to keep repeating yourself, Nathan. I heard you loud and clear. He raked a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. Can we at least talk about this? Please. I snapped the suitcase shut and straightened. What's left to say? I love you. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around the suitcase handle. Love doesn't look like this, Nathan. His face crumpled. I shook my head, cutting him off. Don't. Just, don't. Emily grabbed my second bag and slung it over her shoulder. We're done here. Nathan took a small step forward. Where are you going? I met his eyes, unwavering. Somewhere you're not. With that, I turned and walked past him, Emily right beside me. This time, I didn't look back. Not once. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing Nathan and our broken marriage inside. I stood in the driveway, gripping the suitcase handle so tightly my knuckles ached. Emily was already at her car, loading my bags into the trunk, but I couldn't move just yet. This was it. The moment my life split into before and after. I used to believe in forever. I used to believe that love could survive anything. But love wasn't supposed to feel like this. I took a slow, shuddering breath and turned toward Emily's car. Behind me, the door swung open. Anna, wait. Nathan's voice cut through the cold air, but I didn't stop. Just give me a chance to fix this. His voice was desperate now. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I turned slowly, meeting his gaze. His eyes, once so familiar, so safe, looked foreign now. How? I asked softly. How do you fix something you didn't even try to protect? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if even he didn't believe his own excuses anymore. I shook my head. You don't get to break me and then ask me to put the pieces back together. His face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw it, the regret, the realization that he had destroyed something he could never get back. But it was too late. It had always been too late. I turned and climbed into Emily's car, slamming the door shut before he could say anything else. As we pulled away, I stared out the window, watching the house disappear behind us. I thought I would feel broken. I thought I would feel lost. But instead, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The ride back to Emily's place was quiet. Not awkward, just heavy. Like the weight of everything that had happened still lingered in the air between us. I watched the city blur past the window, my mind a tangled mess of emotions. Relief. Anger. Heartbreak. Freedom. Emily finally spoke as she pulled into her driveway. You okay? I let out a slow breath. No. She nodded, like she expected that answer. But you will be. I wanted to believe her. I really did. The first night away from Nathan felt like stepping into a new reality. I curled up on Emily's couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at my phone. Dozens of missed calls. Even more texts. Nathan, I don't know how to do this without you. Nathan, please, just talk to me. Nathan, tell me what I can do to make this right. Nathan, I miss you. I love you. Come home. I should have cried. But I didn't. Instead, I turned my phone off and set it aside. Nathan had made his choices. Now, I was making mine. The next morning, Emily set a cup of coffee in front of me and slid her laptop across the table. What's this? I asked. Options. She leaned against the counter. Places you could rent. Divorce lawyers. Even a few job listings, just in case you decide to start fresh. I stared at the screen. It was overwhelming. Terrifying. But also hopeful. I swallowed hard. You really think I can do this? Emily's expression softened. Anna, you are doing this. I looked back at the laptop, my heart pounding. This was it. No more lies. No more betrayal. No more waiting for someone to choose me the way I deserved. It was time to start over. I didn't know exactly what my future looked like. But for the first time in a long time, I knew one thing for sure. It would no longer include Nathan. And that? That felt like freedom. The end.